How much money do you expect to make off of your podcast?
This year, my show, Young and Profiting, is set to make $1 million. On average, we are increasing sales per month for our podcasters by 300 to 400%.
Not 30 to 40.
No, by 300 to 400. Last year, I made $6 million off my guests. It's very strategic. It was an accident at first.
Let's talk about the world of paid interviews. How does this whole world work? Do you think are a lot of shows doing paid interviews?
People are doing paid interviews like every other month. The other thing with paid interviews is sometimes...
What are the things that make a difference in search optimization?
So I'm still like testing stuff, but Spotify and Apple are two different algorithms. So we can start with Spotify. What I've found out so far is that another thing that creators don't really understand is that your podcast has multiple variables to be successful at monetization.
So why would someone come to YAP Media? What would you be providing different?
So first of all, YAP fam, if you listen to this show, you know that I'm always the one asking all the questions and listening intently. But I know you guys also want to learn from me. And this time, the mic got flipped. I recently had the absolute pleasure of being a guest on the Nathan Barry Show, and it's one of the best interviews I've done in a long time. And that's because Nathan is just so smart. We're in the same world. He asks the right questions. We're both super nerdy. And so we go deep on all things podcast monetization, social media, building a business. And I dropped some serious insider secrets on how I built Young and Profiting into a $1 million podcast and how I scaled the YAP Media podcast network into a full-blown, soon-to-be 8-figure enterprise. Yep, we're about to hit 10 million this year in annual revenue, so super excited about that. And in this episode, we get real about podcast monetization strategies. Most creators don't even know about the things that I talk about in this interview. In fact, I was a little bit hesitant to share some of the things that I shared in this interview, but you know what? I'm one to give away all of my secrets. That's my style. And so we talk about creative ad campaigns, simulcast sponsorships, full catalog dynamic ad insertion. I reveal how I generated millions in agency revenue off the guests of my podcasts. We talk about LinkedIn strategies going viral, and that's just the beginning. Honestly, like I mentioned, Nathan is super nerdy like me, and so we just go really deep, and he asked amazing questions that really help me give the information out that you guys probably want to hear. So if you're a podcaster, content creator, entrepreneur that wants to grow your brand, monetize, get sponsorships, build a network, this conversation is going to really help you with actionable strategies that you quite honestly won't hear anywhere else, because I learned it myself and haven't taught it yet. So this is all new information. So let's get right into my in-person interview with Nathan Barry.
Hala, you're one of the best of anyone I've ever talked to in monetizing and growing podcasts. I just want to dive right into it. How much money do you expect to make off of your podcast, just the podcast itself, this year?
This year, my show, Young and Profiting, is set to make $1 million. That's what we're on track for. We already secured over $600,000 for the year.
That's amazing. And what was revenue last year?
600,000.
Okay,
so we already
more...
surpassed what we did last year.
Q1 is locked in, and you're like, we're already past those numbers, and we can ramp it up from there.
Yeah.
So every creator listening is perking up at that and saying, okay, tell me more.
Yeah.
So maybe let's just start with the size of the show and some of those things so people can kind of frame and be like, okay, you're twice as big as my show, or you're 10 times bigger, or any of that.
Yeah. So we do about 350,000 downloads per month across my audio and my simulcast. That's how much we sell per brand.
Okay.
I technically do more than that, but I only want to put half the ads on my videos on YouTube. And so what I sell to brands is 350,000 impressions per month across my audio, my YouTube, and my LinkedIn Live. That's my simulcast. And I get about 6 to 8 brands a month who sponsor me.
Okay. And so if I can ask maybe a naive question, what is the simulcast and how do you break that down?
So a simulcast is basically any place that you can play your full episodes.
So not YouTube Shorts,
but your full
Reels, but
episodes
full episodes,
where you can put your commercials. So usually it's a 1-to-1 version or close to your podcast. You don't have to title it the same, but generally the same show on your audio, your YouTube. And for me, I also do LinkedIn Live because I have a big following on LinkedIn. Some of my creators in my network do Twitter. You could do IG Live if you want to stream your full episodes on there, which I do sometimes. Right. So it just depends on what channels have your biggest audience, and then you can package that up into one simulcast that you sell to brands.
Okay. And then I feel like there's a way that podcast advertising and sponsorships used to work.
Okay.
Where it's, and this is what I always understood, like someone sponsors, they're baked into that episode, and it goes from there. That's not really how it works in 2025 anymore.
Well, some people still do it that way.
Okay. That's not how the professionals and the experts, like, the people on the cutting edge do it anymore.
That's not the modern way to advertise on your show. So there's like 3 ways to advertise on your show right now. There's baked in episodic, which means that you bake in ads episodically and you really are selling either a package of baked in ads, maybe 4 or 8 a month, or like 2 every month for the year or whatever. So you're selling a package of baked in ads typically.
And so if we had a sponsor on this episode, then forever, when someone goes back and listens to it, it would be thanks to Squarespace or whoever,
unless you had some like 90-day clause that you can remove the ad after 90 days. Usually it's forever, and brands will pay a higher CPM to get that baked in forever. Now, another way that people think they're modernizing their ad tech is through faked in. Okay. So basically what faked in ads are is that you're on a platform like Art19 or Megaphone, and you're able to dynamically insert the ad, but they're still doing it episodically. And so they're faking in the baked in ad, and then they're typically removing it after 90 days.
And swapping it out with someone else?
They might be swapping it out with another. So a lot of people are doing faked in ads for their new episodes, and then they're monetizing potentially their back catalog only with dynamic ad insertion. At YAP Media, we do full back catalog and new episode dynamic ad insertion. So it's called full catalog, DAI.
Okay.
We're monetizing every single download, whether it's a new episode or an old episode, across the entire catalog. And that takes a lot of work to get your catalog ready to do that, especially if you have like an older legacy show. So oftentimes, let's say Jenna Kutcher is in my network. When she signed on, she had like 500, 600 episodes. We had to take 100 hours of manpower and go through all her old episodes, remove the old commercials, and then add in dynamic insertion markers so that we could run full catalog DAI on her show.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Give the rundown of YAP Media.
YAP Media is my company, and it's really twofold. I started it as a social media and podcast agency. We're the number one LinkedIn marketing agency. And so I started my agency portion of the business 5 years ago.
Okay.
And we basically manage influencers, CEOs, entrepreneurs, their personal brand across Instagram, LinkedIn, and podcasts. We produce podcasts as well. Then about 3 years ago now, I started the YAP Media Network, where I grow and monetize other top business, self-improvement, society, and culture shows. And now we have about 35 shows. People like Jenna Kutcher, Neil Patel, Russell Brunson, John Lee Dumas, Lori Harder. We've got amazing creators in our network.
Yeah, there's so many people. We cross paths a lot, right? Jenna and JLD and others, I've been friends with them for a long time. Jenna uses Kit. And so there's a lot of these.
So much overlap with our business.
Lots of crossovers. So why would someone come to YAP Media? What would you be providing different from, if you're listening to podcasts, you might hear, I don't know, the HubSpot Podcast Network pop up or some of these others. On the surface, it sounds like apples to apples. And as I've dug in, I'm like, oh, they're not the same at all.
I would say we're more of like a white glove podcast network. So first of all, we're so good at monetizing. I was telling you earlier, my shows have been sold out since January, like 70% sold out. And now we're like completely sold out for the year. So my number one goal is...
So my friend Bob Glazer, who you represent his show.
Elevate,
Yeah, so we were hanging out, I guess in end of February. And he was like, oh yeah, my show's sold out through the end of the year already. And I was like, Bob, it's like February 15th. And he's like, yeah.
It's crazy. And no other networks, I don't think, have this problem. Advertisers are like, what are you talking about? You're sold out. It's like, yeah, we're sold out. And that's because we prioritize these really long-term deals. We've got more demand for our shows because we understand how to package up sponsorships in a way where there's just not that many opportunities for sponsors to get in because we want to lock in people for the long term. So, for example, like I really only have 10 to 12 brands for the entire year that can really sponsor my show, at least for the long term, because there's no room for like these small flights. And a lot of these networks are doing these really small deals and they're kind of just churning and burning advertisers. And we don't like to do that at YAP Media. But you were asking what makes us different. So number one, we're just amazing at sales. So on average, we are increasing sales per month for our podcasters by 300 to 400%.
Not 30 to 40.
No, by 300 to 400. People are like, what?
That zero makes a difference.
So we're really able to increase monetization. And that's because Like I said, we're focused on really long-term deals, 360 campaigns. So because I started as a social media agency, we really understand how to do all these creative campaigns, these dynamic campaigns that go way beyond just commercials. So we just don't only sell commercials.
Right.
And so 40% of our podcasters' revenue every month comes from creative campaigns that might touch the podcast, but it's not just related to the podcast itself. We're also really flexible. So a lot of these networks will lock you in to a certain amount of ads, to a certain amount of frequency of your podcast episodes or length. We're really flexible in that way because our creators are typically CEOs. They've got their own things going on. And so we try to support them in the best way that we can, where they can really opt in and opt out of anything.
Because they might have their own products or companies that they want to promote.
Yeah, they might need like a blackout period to promote their big push of the year, for example. We help them flight any internal ads that they have. Some networks don't allow that. Any sort of affiliate deals or whatever that they want to push on their podcast, we don't take a cut of that. We're only taking a cut of the sponsorships that we secure.
Yep.
And in general, we're just more flexible. Like if somebody's like, Hala, I can't do 8 episodes a month anymore. I'm like, okay, cool. Let's do 4. Just know that you're not going to make as much money, but we need this much time so that we can re-rate all the deals. But it's just more flexible. And I think it's partially because we're still small enough to be flexible. Whereas these other networks, you're just locked in and there's nothing that you can do about it. So we're flexible. And the other thing is that we're really transparent. So that's the other thing that makes us completely different. We've got 24/7 financial trackers. We've got proposal updates every week where we're saying this is all the deal status, this closed, this didn't, and giving people updates that way. And we try to be really helpful to our podcasters. So we create recording packs, for example. I don't think any other network does that. Everybody's in our Slack, right? We've got Slack channels for all of our teams. So it's just like really tight knit. We really help support the organization for the shows and also our growth programs, because I don't think every podcast network has like a Hala Taha behind trying to figure out how to grow all the shows. So we've got lots of really innovative growth programs.
So I want to get into podcast growth, and that's probably where we'll talk about a bunch of that in a little bit. But going back to your show, and that 600,000 from last year, is that all sponsorships? How does that break down?
So that's 60, it's a really even split. 60% was podcast commercial money, just straight commercials, mid-rolls typically.
And are those host-read?
Host-read. We don't even turn on programmatic.
Why is that?
Programmatic is, there's a couple reasons.
Problematic?
Programmatic is problematic. So number one, lower CPM. So host-read ads, we can get anywhere from typically like gross CPMs, I'm talking $26 to $35.
Okay.
Programmatic is usually like $5 to $17.
Yeah.
So way different.
Half at best.
Yep. The other thing is that you don't know what brands got played until the month is over. So you can do category exclusions on Spotify Ad Network or AdsWiz and say like, I don't want gambling, I don't want lottery or like nothing like this. But you still don't know the brands until afterwards. And it doesn't perform as well. It's not great for the listener experience. I love doing ads and I never get complaints because I treat them like stories. I make them funny. And it's just like a part of the show. It's just not as intrusive as a programmatic ad. Right. So there's multiple reasons, but we typically don't turn them on at all on our network.
Okay, so then that 60% is from the commercial side, the host-read ads.
And then 40% is from creative campaigns. So every podcaster has different creative campaigns that they leverage. So at my network, one of the first things that we do during onboarding is we talk about what are you willing to do? How can we productize your creative campaigns on like a quarterly basis? So for example, I do webinars and they're really popular. So I'll have Pipedrive, Teachable, BetterHelp. They sponsor me for these webinars where I educate the audience on a topic. So for example, Pipedrive, I'll do like a sales training.
Yep.
And part of that will include like a 10-minute demo of Pipedrive, and I'll just tie in Pipedrive to that. And there's social promotions, there's email promotions to invite people to the live webinar. We're really trying to drive free signups. It converts super well. And then we replay it on my YouTube, my LinkedIn Live, and we clean it up and put it on the audio podcast as well. So it's a real 360 campaign, and I'm doing 2 of these a quarter. And people are paying anywhere from like $30,000 to $50,000 for this one webinar for me to do. That's something that I do. Other creators do like email newsletters or like a series of email newsletters. There's all different types of creative campaigns that we can do.
Yeah. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And so in that case, the brand is looking for like how many high quality leads did you drive to Pipe Drive or something like that?
Yeah, so they're tracking signups, right?
Yeah.
How many paid signups did you get? Free trial signups did you get for that webinar? Yeah. Yeah, fam, I've got a really exciting summer ahead. I'm traveling to Portugal for one of my best friend's weddings. And it's one of those trips that I've circled twice on the calendar months in advance between the ceremony, the after party, and going away afterwards in Europe with my boyfriend. I'm so excited for the sun and my vacation and all the fun memories that we're going to create. It's going to be a non-stop adventure. And while I'm super excited, I'm also thinking about how my apartment is going to be sitting empty. And that got me thinking, this could be a perfect time to host on Airbnb. I'm not exactly a hands-on type of a host. I'm running a whole company. But that's why I'm really excited to use Airbnb's co-host network. A co-host is a local superstar who works with you to make the magic happen with your Airbnb. They handle the day-to-day details like guest messaging, restocking supplies, and even add a little design flair to your space to make it more attractive if you'd like. You don't have to be on-site or hands-on and host like a pro. You just team up with a co-host pro and make it happen that way. I love to outsource. You guys know me. You can find yourself a co-host at airbnb.com/host.
Okay, so to take the example further, if we were to hypothetically use, let's use Kit as an example, right? We're trying to reach entrepreneurs, creators, all of that. So how would you go about packaging? Let's say we wanted to do a webinar for Kit and packaging that. And maybe as you talk to it, think of the things that speak from the creator side, right? That another creator thinking of doing the same kind of offering might want to
100%. So first of all, when you're selling any sort of creative campaign, you need to think of what are the channels, what are the deliverables that I'm guaranteeing, right?
Okay.
So part of it would be pre-promotion period, then the live webinar, then the post-promotion is how I think about it. So for pre-promotion, it might be like pre-rolls on my podcast. I'll give 100,000 pre-rolls to promote people signing up to the webinar.
Right.
I'll do 2 LinkedIn posts and they're going to get 50,000 impressions each. And then anybody who engages will then DM them and invite them to the webinar. So DM retargeting on the LinkedIn posts, right?
Okay. That's something that I haven't thought about more. Like break that down. How does that work?
So basically, especially on LinkedIn, you can DM any of your first connections and then you can invite and then DM any second or third connections. So what we do for all of our sponsored promotions is anybody who likes or comments or even shares, we're then going to retarget them in the DMs with either the promo CTA link for the brand or the registration link for a webinar or whatever we're trying to drive clicks to. And the click-through rate on DMs is way higher than people just clicking the posts. And so that's typically how we get almost all of our registrants for our webinars is actually DM retargeting on the posts that we're doing to promote the webinar or any past posts that we think that that audience would want information about that webinar.
So if you had a story-driven post that got people's attention and maybe it talks about the brand or the webinar a little bit, but it's not, you're not pushing the CTA super hard. So you're getting likes, shares, comments. That's the top of funnel. And then everybody who engages, you're then following up with the CTA.
Exactly,
is that right?
to sign up to the webinar. So then they get multiple touch points. It could barely talk about the brand, right? Just talking about sales. Let's take Pipe Drive for an example. So maybe I'm giving a sales tip. It does really well on LinkedIn. I get 1,000 likes, 500 comments, whatever. We retarget those people, invite them to the webinar. And then in the webinar, they're getting such amazing value.
Right.
The law of reciprocity is in play because it's all sponsored by Pipe Drive. Pipe Drive is on every single slide. And they're like, oh my God, I learned so much in this webinar. And it's all thanks to Pipe Drive, right?
Right.
And then they're receptive to watching the demo. They feel like Pipe Drive is on their side. And they end up signing up a lot of the times.
You're blowing my mind here already because I didn't realize the way to do engagement. I was looking at the comments, or maybe you're replying or engaging in the comments further, but not realizing the DM follow-up that's happening behind the scenes because you don't actually see, you know,
and
like
that's
if
what
I'm
my
watching your
company
LinkedIn,
does,
I don't
right?
see that.
So like we have a LinkedIn agency, so that's why I'm lucky because I've got a whole team that's like, 24/7 DMing people, and it's just another one of our strategies, right? So
how does LinkedIn handle it? You know, on some of these platforms, if you're doing more outbound or you're pushing more of this, there's limits, right?
So LinkedIn is actually really good. There's no limits. Once you've warmed up your account now, you can't like day one.
Brand new account.
DM 1,000 people in a day. But on my account, we literally are DMing people 24/7.
And you're doing it from your personal...
My personal account. You cannot DM on a company account.
Yeah.
You can only do it on a personal profile. So first connections, unlimited amount of DMs. So the name of the game when you become a huge LinkedIn influencer, once you hit 30,000 connections, you actually want to remove people who don't respond to you so that you can keep DMing people.
Okay.
So I am removing people every day to bring in new people that will attend my webinars or subscribe to my podcast or whatever it is. And so you constantly want to bring in new people that you can DM, but you always have 30,000 people that you could DM every single day in an unlimited manner, which is totally different than Instagram. It's like 25 a day or something on Instagram. So you can just DM all day. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to use you as my personal LinkedIn coach for just a minute. Because I have a question on this.
Yeah.
So I have like 30,000 followers on LinkedIn.
Okay.
And I mostly kept the connections for people that I actually know.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, I have maybe 1,500 connection requests that I have just let sit there.
Yeah.
I think what you're saying is I should accept every one of those connection requests.
If you think you can sell to them. If not, you shouldn't, because they automatically follow you now if they send a request usually.
Okay.
And you can now, this is a new feature. So I also have like thousands of people who sit in my connection requests. We can actually DM those people now without having to connect with them. So part of my strategy, especially when we're like out of people to DM, I'm like, go DM all the people on my invite list, you know, because just more people to invite to the webinar or do whatever we need to do. So you can DM those people with some, sorry, my connections are full, or I'm really picky about my connections, but I'd love for you to check out ConvertKit, you know? So you can still DM those people and engage them, and it will tell you if they're following you or not.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, interesting. Let's say I accept a connection request and then later remove them because they weren't engaged and I've hit my 30,000 limit. Do they remain following me?
You can't force them to unfollow you. You can only remove a first connection.
Okay.
So this is actually really important. You don't want to have dead connections on your LinkedIn because you want people who take viral action, who see your stuff to engage within the first 90 minutes of you posting.
Okay.
So you actually don't want dead connections who don't log on, who don't take viral action, or people who wouldn't like your stuff, because then you're never going to go viral, because in that first 90 minutes, you're not going to get engagement because the people either don't see your stuff, or if they do, they're not going to engage
scroll right
on
past it.
Yeah. So you want to make sure that you're bringing in people to your network who would take viral action and support your content. The one thing I'll say is that about 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, LinkedIn wiped out a ton of dead profiles. So when I first used to bring on clients, I used to go through and have my team find out like who hasn't logged on in 6 months and stuff like that.
Right.
Through Sales Navigator, you can actually see that.
Okay.
And then we'd remove thousands of followers, and that would kickstart their account. But now they already removed a lot of them. So if you don't have a ton of followers, you don't need to really worry about it. Just going forward, I would just make sure you are purposely trying to get people who take viral action. I'll give you one more tip of how to find those people. Go look at influencers on LinkedIn. Go on somebody who has a really engaged profile like GaryVee, Alex Hormozi, Codie Sanchez.
Yeah, Chris Donnelly.
Me,
Yep.
you know? So go on my stuff. And if you feel like they're a lookalike profile, somebody who has an audience that you want, anybody who likes and comments on their stuff is the perfect audience for you. So you would just go look who likes and comments and then invite those people to connect, because you know they take viral action, they like similar content, and that's the perfect person to invite to your audience.
And so you could go out and connect with them. And
that's how I first started on LinkedIn. I targeted GaryVee's followers.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah.
Because so much, when people think about inbound marketing and you got to lead with great content so that people will happen to see that in their feed, follow you, and go from there. But what you're saying is, yes, obviously have the great content because that's what they're going to stick around for.
Yeah.
But you can go out and find people and put your content in front of them.
Well, there's so many reasons why this works. We're getting real into the LinkedIn rabbit hole here.
Yeah, we are.
So many
we'll get back
reasons
to
why this
podcasting
works.
in a moment.
So the reason why this works is because DMs are the most viral action on LinkedIn. So if you DM somebody and they DM you back, they're 85% more likely to see your content the next time they log on.
So basically what you're saying is that is determining the algorithm feed. It's like on Instagram where, same thing with DMs,
like
the stories are going to show up at the front.
Exactly. So because you DM them, LinkedIn's like, oh, they're friends.
Yeah.
This person wants to see your content. They responded back, right? So first of all, new connections also see your stuff more frequently. So you connect with them. Hey, I noticed you engage with GaryVee. If you like his stuff, you're going to like mine too. I talk about motivation. I have a podcast. I talk about marketing. Let's connect.
Yep.
I'd love to provide value on your feed. They accept. they respond back. Better yet, you have like a conversation with them. So they're not only bought in from the algorithm, but they're bought into you as a person. Then they start engaging on your content. Because they start engaging on your content, LinkedIn starts showing your content to their first connections that are similar and are interested in that type of content. So it's like a flywheel effect.
Yep.
Also, when you comment on that influencer's post where you share so many connections, LinkedIn's more likely to notify those connections that you commented. And so you'll get engagement on that comment on GaryVee's post, for example. And comments have their own impression algorithm. And that's actually being shown on LinkedIn now. You can see this comment has 1,000 impressions or whatever. So people start seeing your comment, they're even more likely to follow you on their own accord because they're like, why does this person have so much engagement on their content? Who's this person?
Right.
And then they follow you that way. So there's so many different reasons why it works. But the whole strategy is, how do you get people who are engaged on LinkedIn to start engaging with your steps so that you're just in this community that will just help you go viral?
Oh, that's amazing. Okay, so bringing this back from LinkedIn to podcasting, because LinkedIn is a huge part of your podcast success.
It is.
So talk to me about what you do specifically for the podcast growth on LinkedIn.
So I have a couple strategies for LinkedIn. I do LinkedIn Lives and I play my full episodes, and then I'll retarget anybody who likes and comments on those videos, and I'll ask them to subscribe to my podcast. So I'll say, hey, I noticed that you checked out my live stream. If you didn't catch the full episode, here's the link to the full episode. Most of the time people are like, oh, I already listened, or I listened, it was awesome. Oh, thank you. Can you copy and paste that as an Apple Podcast review? Right?
Yep.
So what is this doing? This is actually helping my ranking on Apple. So driving new people to your Apple page increases your ranking. So ranking is not based on downloads. It's based on new subscribers. So daily new subscribers.
Because I've seen some shows shoot way up the rankings where I'm like, I don't think that you're getting more downloads than these other established shows.
So Spotify rankings is based on trends. They're trending charts. They're not download charts. Mm-hmm. So you can't actually tell who's a bigger podcast based on their ranking. It's all based on daily new subscribers. Now, some people are using virtual machines and people from Bangladesh and whatever, and they can just manipulate it, right? And so some people are doing that. Some people are doing like me, where they're sending DMs I'd send DMs 24/7, and I'm always at the top of the charts because I'm just driving new subscribers all the time. And I have a fairly large show as well, which helps, but it's really the new subscribers through the DM. So LinkedIn Live is the primary way that I'm getting new subscribers. And then also, like I was mentioning before, since there's unlimited DMs, we're constantly thinking of strategies of how can we find more people interested in the podcast. So for example, we can see who registered for like a negotiation event. And then we can say, hey, I just interviewed Chris Voss about negotiation. I'd love to send you a link to my podcast. Or you mentioned Mark Manson before. Hey, I just interviewed Mark Manson. I noticed you follow him. I'd love to give you a link to the podcast. So we're constantly trying to just get new subscribers through finding the target audience on LinkedIn.
Okay, that's fascinating. And then the target audience is so interesting because for my show, I'm focused so much on serving professional creators who are already really established.
Yeah.
And so if someone's like, oh, when are you going to do a beginner episode on this? I'm like, never. It's not going to happen. Right. Because I want the show to be like your favorite creator's favorite podcast.
Yeah.
And so some of the growth tactics that I've heard other podcasters talk about are all about how do I just reach more masses? I don't care about that at all. I want to get the right people.
Yeah.
And so what you're describing is really this direct, you could say like, okay, let me figure out how to find established creators on LinkedIn and then invite them to come and listen to the show.
Yeah, there could be a certain title that they have in their profile that you target that way. It could be certain events that they register for, groups
could
that they're a part of.
Could you do it based on follower count?
I don't think you can filter for follower count. I wish you could.
Yeah, but you could have a VA go through and build lists based on follower count.
I would say the best strategy would be like, who's another creator like you or entrepreneur who has a following that you want? And then you can just go look at their following. You can go look at their posts.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay, so going back to your podcast.
Okay.
Because this is so many things of how you've grown the show.
Yeah.
And then, you're on track for $1 million in revenue this year.
Yes.
And we talked about those two sides of it, right? The advertising side and then this 360 deals what other things go into driving revenue? And look, because you were actually telling me you just like dropped a little hint of this. That you actually this is relatively small compared to Which is crazy to say that $1 million this year is relatively small compared to some of the other ways that you're monetizing and earning off the podcast.
Yeah. So my podcast is the main lead gen for my social media and podcast agency and for my podcast network.
Yeah.
And so the people who I interview, we're pretty strategic about it. It's people that I'd want on my show anyway. I have an entrepreneurship show. So a lot of entrepreneurs have podcasts now, need somebody to help them with their personal brand. And so $1 million this year off my podcasts. Last year, I made $6 million off my guests from the agency and
so that's
my network.
A portion of the guests saying, okay, so tell me more about this. Like, I'd love to sign up for your agency.
Yeah, and I'll tell you exactly how I do it. It's very strategic. It was an accident at first.
Yeah, and then you're like, wait a second,
and then
that
I was
worked.
like, oh my gosh, we could just totally use this, right? So podcast is the main lead gen, and it's all like stealth marketing. So first of all, our guest outreach team, who's incredible and like super professional, like they don't skip a beat. They've got an email signature that says #1 LinkedIn marketing agency, top self-improvement and business podcast network, just in the email signature. So like they're getting a glimpse of what we do. We send everybody a gift box. Who's the guest? So they get a branded box. It says #1 self-improvement network. There's like a little flyer in there. They get like a mug and a mic and like all this cool stuff. And there's just like a little bit about what our company does. Then before the interview, and this is something that I learned and I wish I was doing it earlier, because when somebody hops on an interview with me, they always just assume I just have this podcast and nothing else. You know, like they're just like, or like that I got lucky or whatever they thought. So now I'm just like, my name is Hala. I have a company called YAP Media. It's like the #1 LinkedIn agency. We're a top podcast network. Sometimes I'll throw out, we're on track to hit 8 figures this year, whatever, depending on what I want to do. And I just let them know what I do. And typically what happens is that after the interview, and of course I do a really good job. For example, I was supposed to interview you today and I was like, I can't. I didn't get time to study. I was like, I can't. I got to study really hard for my interviews because I want to do a great job. And then usually at the end of the show, they're like, I know that you do LinkedIn. Can we talk about it? And if they don't ask me something like that, I'd be like, so how's your podcast going? How are you monetizing at the end? And then I'll just give them some advice. I'll be like, oh, you're doing it that way. You should do X, Y, Z. And they'll be like, hey, like, can we talk about this more?
Who did this and you could share a story.
So it's like, I just give advice. I'm not hard selling in any way. I'm always waiting for them to say, can we hop on a call?
Right.
And that's how I get all my clients.
So are you deliberately leaving 5 to 15 minutes at the end of the podcast recording so that if you could have a conversation?
I try. Okay. Sometimes it's hard because I just want like the content for my show. And there's like 2 minutes and I'm like, by the way, how's your podcast?
Yeah, exactly.
So I should be better at that. But yeah, like it usually just naturally ends up. And I love it because they feel like it was their idea, And like, so it's just way easier to sell.
It was their idea.
It was their idea.
It was your idea to create the opportunity for it to be their idea.
Exactly.
Oh, that's fascinating.
And swaps work even better.
Okay, talk about that.
Because that's an opportunity for me to give my expertise. So once they're like, oh my gosh, she knows so much about LinkedIn and podcasting, I want to work with her. So I've noticed that like conversion, if we do a swap, skyrockets.
Because they're going to spend an hour asking you about all of the things.
They realize,
and they're going to take all of these notes and then they're going to go,
like, can you just do this for me? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
YAP Gang, when I first started Young and Profiting podcast back in 2018, it was just a hobby. And for 2 good years, I poured more time and money than I got back. At times, I kept asking myself, is this worth it? What if it never works? What if I don't have the tools, the time, or the team? But I just pushed through and I was consistent. And now it's one of the top entrepreneurship podcasts in the world. I almost let those what ifs stop me from building something incredible. If you're sitting on a business idea, it's time to stop overthinking and start doing with Shopify. Shopify powers millions of businesses worldwide and 10% of all US e-commerce, from giants like Gymshark and Mattel to startups just getting started. No team, no problem. Shopify handles everything from web design to inventory to customer service and shipping all in one place. If you're on a tight budget, their built-in marketing and email tools help you find and keep customers. Selling in person is also seamless with Shopify's award-winning point of sale, which connects your online and offline sales. Want to go global? Shopify supports sales in over 150 countries with tools for translation, international shipping, and local currencies. And with 99.99% uptime and the best converting checkout on the planet, you'll never miss a sale. Turn those what ifs into and keep giving those big dreams the best shot with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/profiting. That's all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/profiting. Again, it's shopify.com/profiting. YAP fam, as the CEO of a growing media company like YAP, I've had to hire dozens and dozens of people over the years. And trust me, when you're scaling fast, hiring the right people quickly is absolutely crucial. You're handling a million things, wearing so many hats, and the last thing you want to do is waste your time going through the wrong candidates. That process is so lengthy. And that's why when it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Indeed saves me so much time because I'm no longer struggling to get my job post seen on other job sites because Indeed sponsored jobs helps me stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates so you can reach the people that you want faster. And the numbers totally back it up. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs get 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. That's 45% less time that you need to worry about finding the right candidates. And one of the things that I love about Indeed is that it makes hiring so fast because your job post gets seen by the right people right away. When I've hired in the past, the process just dragged on. And honestly, I wish I had used Indeed to save time and stress and to find the best candidates fast. Plus, with Indeed sponsored jobs, there's no monthly subscriptions, no long-term contracts, and you only pay for results. How fast is Indeed? In the minute that we've been talking, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of the show get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/profiting. Just go to Indeed.com/profiting right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/profiting. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed is all you need.
So the way that you're ultimately monetizing then is the agency fees that they're paying you for managing social, implementing all these LinkedIn strategies, all of that. And then obviously
rev share on the sponsorships
on that side. What's the split of that in your business?
I would say about 2.5 million was agency. And then last year it was like 4 million on the network, including my show.
Oh, that's amazing. I always think about packaging of content, right? So as you're having a conversation, things that run through my head of like, okay, how would you package this on YouTube so that someone is searching for the right thing and they come across it and totally delivers on it? Mm-hmm. And just as a very meta thing that creators will care about. Yeah. In this, what's running through my head is like, oh, building a $6 million agency, building a podcast to $1 million a year in revenue. Yeah. The secrets for growing on LinkedIn. Like we've covered all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. I feel like I have so much more to share, especially on the podcast side.
Yeah. What's something on the podcast side that you think professional creators would really want to know?
So I feel like a lot of people just don't understand how podcast sponsorships work. Mm-hmm. And I feel like there's so many creators that like are kind of scared of it.
Okay. Why would they be scared of it? So like
there's so many creators that have a big enough show to monetize, but they're like, I don't do sponsorships. You know?
Like is there like some status that that comes from that?
Or like they feel like I've never done that before, or I just sell my own products, or I make so much money on my stuff that like I don't need to do that.
I mean, candidly, I'm in that boat, right?
You are in that boat.
Because the show's so targeted. We've got a good number of downloads, but not hundreds of thousands a month. And I make a lot of money running Kit.
So you might not be a great fit because you still need maybe more volume.
Yeah. But if you're getting to someone who, say, has 100,000 downloads per month, and they're like, I don't do sponsorships because I make, my course makes $1 million a year.
Yeah, but they can make another $1 million, or maybe they can make another $250,000 doing sponsorships or more, depending on how creative they are. Mm-hmm. Like I was telling you, like I punch way above my weight. I probably make double a podcaster my size. So transparently, guys, I get like 350,000 downloads a month across my simulcast. It's a big show. It is not a huge show. Mm-hmm. So I'm like probably the 4th biggest show on my network right now.
Okay.
Now, a lot of people lie about their podcast numbers. So when I say 350,000, people are like, they might think like that's small, but a lot of people in this world lie about their numbers, and I don't lie about my numbers.
Right. people will combine it in a way like that's why I dug in a little bit when you said, long form plays, like full length.
Exactly.
Because people will put their YouTube Shorts numbers in there. Or they're like, this reel went viral and that was from the podcast.
It's actually really funny. Like I have people that I'll hop on a call from my network and they'll be like, oh, I'll be like, how many downloads do you get? They're like 2 million a month. And I'm like, that's not true. I'm like, let's talk real numbers so I can give you real projections. And then I'm like, I go into their stuff and they get 20,000 downloads a month. I don't know if people are like lying on purpose or like they just don't understand. Right. So when we talk about downloads, it's usually monthly downloads. So some people will give their all-time downloads. Right. Some people will give their downloads before the Apple iOS 17 update.
Talk about that for a second because there are definitely people, as algorithms change, both in podcasts or email or all of that, where there's one way of running and checking numbers before, and then after the update, things are different. So what happened there?
So iOS 17 update happened like a year and a half ago, and basically it removed automatic downloads on Apple. So in the past, if somebody listened to your show and they didn't go on Apple, the next time they went on Apple, let's say like they didn't go on Apple for 6 months, the next time they logged into their Apple app, it would download at the same time all the episodes that they missed.
Yep.
So it was just a lot of bloated downloads on Apple, and podcasters lost anywhere from 40 to 70% of their downloads on Apple.
And they weren't real listeners.
They weren't real listeners. And they were also mostly back catalog downloads. So again, it was the downloading of all the old episodes typically. It really impacted legacy podcasters who were on Apple for a long time.
Okay.
So legacy podcasters on Apple are funny because a lot of people, they have tons of reviews, right? So if they started in like 2014 to 2018 timeframe, you'll go on their page, you think they're a huge podcast because they have like 12,000 reviews, whatever. But they were just early adopters and there wasn't a lot of podcasts. So they ended up getting a lot of listeners and reviews. But now their podcast is likely really small after this iOS 17 or has drastically decreased in downloads. And I saw that with a lot of my podcasters. A lot of my shows lost downloads. I was lucky because I had a really diverse strategy. Like I'm a big podcaster on CastBox. I have downloads on all these different platforms. So I didn't really see much of a hit, but other podcasters did.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. So then where we're getting into with podcast growth and your show and all of that. So you're talking about how the downloads are calculated, but what's that in service of?
So another thing that creators don't really understand is that your podcast has multiple variables to be successful at monetization. If you have 100,000 downloads on your podcast and you can only take one commercial, that means that you can only monetize 100,000 downloads. But if you have 100,000 downloads and you can fit 6 commercials on your podcast, suddenly you can monetize 600,000 downloads. Okay. So there's lots of ways to monetize and kind of expand the amount that you can make just on increasing your episode length, for example, and just getting creative. So for example, I created like a new inventory for my network of mini episodes that get 100% share voice. So we're all sold out. So I have to think, how do I make more inventory, So one of the ways is through these mini feed episodes. They're 10 to 20 minute episodes that will do like 6 a quarter for a brand, 100% share of voice. And it's sort of like a really long baked in ad. It's more expensive because it's like a full episode and we put it in the podcast, right? So now suddenly you can 6x your downloads just by having a longer show where you can fit more commercials. So typically it's about, for audio, it's about 1 commercial per 10 minutes. Is what you can fit comfortably. And you can also do creative things to monetize your show, like paid interviews or mini series or these other things like we were talking about, webinars, whatever else you want to do in terms of monetization.
Let's talk about the world of paid interviews because this is something that I think both brands need to know and understand more about and the creators and the hosts need to know more of. How does this whole world work? I think that a lot of people just assume that every guest on a show is just someone that they thought would be interesting and you had them on and it's very casual in that way. But actually there's a lot more happening behind the scenes.
Yeah. So there's lots of different ways that people can do it. Some people are like, literally, you have to pay $3,000 to come on my show. And every single guest, for the most part, is paid, right? Very few shows like that, I think. But there are some shows where like that's their entire monetization strategy. Most shows, especially reputable shows that have great content, great following, they're typically doing paid interviews when there's good brand fit. So for example, with my show, I interviewed the CEO of Just Thrive. She has like a probiotics company. She talks about gut health. She's really passionate about it. She has an awesome story. And she did like a tour on my network where she paid for the interviews. And then after the interviews, we did mid-rolls for her company. And it worked really well. And that's her like number one marketing strategy to grow her company is guesting on shows and then doing mid-rolls afterwards. So now she just does this at every network, but she started with YAP Media. So it's just like any other 360 campaign. It's very similar to the webinar campaign. We put together deliverables. So it includes an interview. It includes a link in the show notes. It includes mid-roll commercials, social posts, email blasts. And it's just a package of deliverables based on your channels and the impressions that you can guarantee. And you price it. And the way that you price it is really up to the podcaster's discretion. Like, what is it worth for you to have somebody on the show? And then you want to back into like a reasonable eCPM. So a CPM is for podcast commercials. And now eCPM is this new term for the CPM across all different deliverables.
Okay.
And so typically a good eCPM is anywhere from $40 to like $150. And the more that you are famous, you're like a celebrity where your endorsement is worth more, or the more difficult the project is. So for example, an interview is a lot easier than creating a whole presentation training, right? So an interview eCPM might be like $50, which is still higher than a commercial, which is $30. But a webinar might be like $80 because it's just harder to do, right? Yep. So you always want to put some sort of CPM behind it, or else the brand's going to be like, well, this is just doesn't make sense. I can't back into this, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so a brand is thinking about it of, how do I build credibility for my executive or the brand as a whole?
Yep.
And then how do we follow that up with buying more impressions? Because, for example, if I were to come on your show as paying for the slot, then I know that a good chunk of your audience is going to hear that episode.
Yep.
And so then over the next month or more, as I'm running ads on your show, then they're going to be like, oh yeah, I listened to Nathan on the podcast. I know what Kid is.
Exactly. And then they're more likely to take action. Because podcasting, you really need to repeat, like have repetition. And if you have a whole interview, that's basically an hour-long commercial for yourself to get people bought in, to trust. And then if you're playing a commercial for another month, the listener has so many chances to remember the link that they need to click to follow up. So the listener just has more chances to actually take action.
Do you think that are a lot of shows doing paid interviews, or is it really... like, if you had to guess, of the shows like, over 100,000 downloads a month, like what percentage?
I think it's like, it's not a lot because most podcasters, if they're going to have, first of all, like once you become a bigger podcaster, like you don't want to have just random people on your show, right? So for me, it like has to have really good brand fit. They have to be able to afford it, which like most people, you know, you tell them $18,000 to come on my show. That's a hard sell for some people, right? So, and for bigger podcasters, they might charge $50,000, $80,000, you know? So I think they're like every so often, but not every single episode.
So they might be doing one out of every 6 to 12 episodes or more than that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense. And then does it end up driving a meaningful percentage of revenue, or is it still usually small relative to the rest of the advertising?
So on average on my network, it's usually 60% commercials, 40% other stuff, whether that's social, paid interviews. And I would say on my network, people are doing paid interviews like every other month. I wanted to get more of them, right? They're just hard to secure. The other thing with paid interviews is sometimes it's like an upsell for the brand. So for example, with Shopify, I have the most commercials out of anybody for Shopify, right? Okay. And so I interviewed all their top founders that use Shopify as like a paid interview series, right? So you can also like upsell to brands. I did something with the Olympics where I interviewed all these Olympians.
And that's great content for your show, right? Because someone's like, oh, we'll pay the $18,000 for the interview and we want to have this person on. And you're like, no. Yeah. No. Who's the person that's going to deliver a ton of value and really elevate the brand? And the benefit of like pricing high is if they can afford it, they probably have something cool to say because they can afford that cost, you know? So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, what about if we dive into growing shows? Yeah. So we talked about the LinkedIn strategy. What are some other things that work really well for growing shows? So there's like two avenues that you can take. There's media buying
And that's really getting advertising on the different podcast players. So there's about 40 different podcast player apps out there. There's Apple and Spotify, right? And the way to get organic visibility on there is through PSO, and like you can't really buy ads on Apple and Spotify.
What's PSO?
Podcast search optimization.
Okay.
So it's like the SEO of podcasts.
Got it.
PSO. Something I'm obsessed with lately. It's like my number one like thing that I'm obsessed with.
Okay, well,
right
let's
now.
dive into that for a second. I always want to talk about someone's obsession. What are the things that make a difference in search optimization?
So I'm still like testing stuff, but basically what I found out, and we can take Spotify and Apple are two different algorithms. So we can start with Spotify. What I found out so far is that all the different metadata points are ranked differently. So your title is ranked the highest, your author title is second highest, then your description, then your titles, then your show notes. When I say description, I mean your podcast description.
As a whole, not as the individual episode.
And the key is to have the same keywords repeating throughout all of them.
Okay.
So something that I've done is I put entrepreneur marketing and sales in my title now. And now I don't even want to give these secrets away. I'm like, wait, should I tell these secrets? But yeah.
But you're noticing that you're ranking higher for those search terms.
Yes. So it's all about repeating the same search terms throughout all the different metadata spots. And the impact of the keywords in your title and author title and your show titles are ranked way more heavily than your show notes. For your show notes, you want to have keywords in the first 2 to 3 lines. Nothing else really matters after that. And again, it's the same keywords over and over again. So this is something that I always kind of knew, but I never proved it. I always kicked myself for calling my podcast Young and Profiting and not like Young Entrepreneur.
Okay.
Because it would have gotten way more organic search and visibility within the apps had I just called it Young Entrepreneur than Young and Profiting, because nobody's searching young or profiting, but they're searching entrepreneur, right? So having a keyword in your title is so important. If you don't have a big show, I would definitely right now go change your name to something with a main keyword. And you can actually use a tool called Ausha.
Okay.
AUSHA. It's a new tool, and it will show you how you rank on all these different keywords, and you can track it. And that's what I've been using to kind of like test things.
Okay.
So Apple is really heavily based on keyword, using the same keyword over and over again. And Apple, I believe, is the same thing, but it also
Spotify is the same thing? Or
so Spotify is using the same keywords over and over again. Apple is similar, except I believe that they heavily weigh how popular your show is.
Okay.
So on Spotify, you can rank very easily, no matter how popular you are, just if you've got a good keyword strategy. On Apple, it seems like it's tracking your downloads and then deciding who gets shown based on their popularity. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Oh man, there's so many things in that. Okay, so that takes us down.
So that's the PSO.
Yeah.
Okay.
That side. Now let's go back to you talking about advertising in these other podcast players.
Well, I have another tip for PSO that's really hot. Okay, so on Apple, on the bottom of the show, and I actually told you this when we were on the phone the other day. On the bottom, it says podcasts you may like, or podcasts like this, something like that on the bottom. That is one of the only organic discoverability features that Apple has,
right?
Other than ranking on the charts, like we just talked about. The way that you get on that is by guesting on other shows. So if I go guest on Lori Harder's show, people listen to that. They end up following me because I went on her show. Now, if she goes on my show, they end up following her because she went on my show. And they show podcasts based on who has mutual subscribers. So now, because I went on Lori's show and I invested in guesting on her show, my show pops up when people go on her show, and that's discoverability for my show. So a big strategy would be guesting on other shows so that you can get in not only that episode, but there's a long tail effect of getting in this podcast like this feature.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So you're getting the instant return from being perceived as an expert in front of a new audience.
Yeah.
And then Apple is saying, hey, there's mutual subscribers here.
Yep.
And it's a very genuine. People who like show A seem to like show B. And it's like, well, yeah, because they...
Yeah, and then also on Apple, there's channel pages now for networks. And so there's also, if you're part of a network, in their Apple channel page, there's also another bar that says podcasters in the network. right?
Oh, interesting.
So that's also how you get organic discoverability, is joining a network who has an Apple page.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then talking about advertising in these other players, how does that work?
So every player has a different advertising strategy, and there's a bunch of them. There's Podcast Addict, Player FM, Castbox, Overcast, right? So there's all these different podcast players, and you can get banners in their apps. You can get integrated into their onboarding series. So when somebody signs up for the app, it can say like, select the categories you're interested in, and then it will say like recommended shows, and they might pre-select you subscribing to them. They can put you in the featured. They can send push notifications to their users. So there's all these different ways. And really what you want to do is test these apps, see what the retention is like, which is really easy to do because most likely if you're a podcaster and you've never bought on these apps, you probably have like 10 downloads from that player. And then you can just see like, okay, during the promotional period, I got X downloads. A month later, I got this much. A month later, I got this much. And you can see like, does this retain or not? And then if it does, and you're happy with it, you just keep buying it. So like I personally love Castbox and Player FM, and I do media buying with them all the time.
Is that something that creators should put $1,000 a month behind, or would you spend even more than that?
So usually these packages range anywhere from like $5,000 to $10,000 a month. So usually it's like if you're already monetizing or you want to monetize. And this is more for like volume. So if you've got a broad show, it's good for that. But if you're like really niche, it's not a good strategy because you're basically just advertising to anybody who's on the app. Right. So if you've got a broad show like mine, it's a great strategy. But if you have a niche show, better just guest on other niche shows is a better strategy for you.
That makes a lot of sense.
Or commercials on other niche shows.
Something that I'm fascinated by from the outside is watching different creators maybe move between networks.
Yeah.
So for example, I feel like when HubSpot came out with their network and they're ramping this up, one, I thought that it worked differently than it did. Mostly they're just facilitating swaps and then buying their own ad inventory. But, I watched a bunch of big podcasters come on with them. And then I've actually seen a decent number of those large podcasters leave HubSpot and go to my network. Go to your network. So like, if you take someone like Jenna Kutcher as an example, what goes into winning her over from any of these other networks to your network?
Yeah, I think with these big creators, most of the selling is control. You can still have control. They trust me. I'm their friend.
Right.
I'm not this big, scary, serious network or like some guy that they don't know that they're signing to. I'm the head honcho at YAP Media. They already know me, so they know that like they could just text me and be like, "Yo, Hala, like blah blah blah, whatever the problem is, Instead
of like, oh, so well, let me talk to my boss, and then I'll try to get the director, whoever.
Actually, it's really funny because so many of my podcasters are podcasters that have never signed to a network before. Because you mentioned HubSpot, but they weren't really a real network. They were an advertiser that was just calling themselves a network. They were just buying a pre-roll and a mid-roll. They did not have sales exclusivity. So like for me, if you're a network, you are responsible for all of the podcaster sales. So for a while, Jenna was on paper in the HubSpot network and I was doing all her ads, including flighting her HubSpot stuff. But I was getting her, she's got 5 ads. One of them is HubSpot and I was doing the other 4, right? And flighting her HubSpot ad. So yeah, it wasn't really a real network.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So then when you're saying, hey, I'm already doing this, fully come over and...
Yeah, because I helped explain to her as well, because she was confused too. Like, she was like, I'm part of the HubSpot network. And I was like, are they running your sales? No. Can you get more ads? Yes. Okay. Are they hosting your show? No. Okay. They're not flighting your ads. Then they're not a network. They're just an advertiser that has branded themselves as a network.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And so... in that, right, as you win her over and you're taking over all of the sales and
all the ops, all the sales, all the tech stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So where do you take that from there? Like, what are some of the first things that when you bring over a big show like that you're like, all right, here's everything that we're optimizing? And
during the onboarding, we're transferring their RSS feed, their audio RSS feed to our network account on Megaphone.
Okay.
And that's actually really simple. So a lot of podcasters are scared of this, right? But that takes an hour, right? Just moving their RSS from wherever they were to like a modern advertising platform. Usually it's Art19, Megaphone, I think Captivate might be another one. There's only really 3. Then we're going through their whole back catalog. We're removing all the old commercials and we're agreeing on an ad load. So this is a conversation that we have with the podcasters. Hey, your show's 45 minutes. I think we can put 4 ads comfortably, 4 mid-rolls, maybe 2 pre-rolls. 1 can be for your internal promotions, the pre-roll, 1 can be for sale. And we're kind of like negotiating like what is a good ad load. This can change over time, right? Like I mentioned, everything is collaborative.
Yep.
So then we're setting up the show to future-proof it, whatever their max ad load they're comfortable with. And then we're just helping them with their episode frequency, length, all the things that we need to make sure that we're able to project impressions for advertisers. And then we're coming up with their monthly catalog number. Once they're in our megaphone, we're getting all their downloads. Then the next step is what is their monthly catalog number that we're going to start selling them at? Okay. Then we're trying to get a gauge of here's the top 100 advertisers we work with. Do you approve? Do you not approve? Then we're hitting the ground running, trying to get sponsorships. One of the things we didn't talk about yet is the way that we sell differently in terms of at YAP, we're focused on monthly flights. So other networks, they might sell weekly dynamic flights, and a lot of them are selling that faked-in strategy that I was talking to you about, right? So we sell full monthly flights. So for somebody like Jenna, who takes 5 ads on her show, that's only 5 brands a month that can sponsor her show. So all year, I'm trying to get her tests. So like a new show comes on, let's say they have no advertisers, they've never advertised before, okay? My job is to get them as many tests as possible and renewals for the year so that by the time like September, November, December comes, that I'm booking them annual deals.
So that's a big part of how you're getting sold out for such a long period of time is you're like, I'm not dealing with, oh, I want to sponsor 2 episodes or something like that. You're saying.
So like our minimum is 1 month flights. And typically people are testing 2 or 3 months at a time. So our tests are 2 to 3 month flights. Then if you perform well, you get a renewal. Sometimes this renewal is till end of year. That's the goal, right? So we want to perform so well that brands, they'll test for 2-3 months, and then they're going to renew for the rest of the year, okay? So if you're with a network that is churning and burning advertisers, they're doing it wrong, okay? They're not strategic. They're just looking for scraps, and you're just getting scraps all month. Basically, You're doing a lot of work because you're having to read all these different commercials. Your audience is getting a bad experience because you've got 20 different brands that you're repping. For example, like Shopify has sponsored me for like 4 years now. Indeed, 4 years. Masterclass. Like LinkedIn, I have the same sponsors. I already know what my sponsors are. Like they don't change. Airbnb, they don't change. So my goal for like a new podcaster is like, I need to, first of all, get them in front of the brands that sponsor my whole network, like Shopify, Indeed, Airbnb, LinkedIn, get them tests, get them renewals. And then in September, November, December, this is called the podcast upfront season.
Okay.
That's when we're trying to negotiate all the annual deals. Okay. The worst time I would say to join a network is in that period.
Because you don't have any tests.
Because everyone's focused on annual deals. And so the slowest quarter of the year is Q1 because everybody was focused on annual deals in Q4. So whenever somebody signs with me in Q4, I'm like, oh, this is going to be suck for them, you know? But it is what it is. They didn't do their tests yet, and we've got to focus on the annual deals. So for example, by the time Jan 1 hit, my network was 60-70% sold out already for the year because everybody had 3-4 annual deals on their show, and that took up spots for the whole year. And then now what's left is just 2 spots. And the highest performing shows, usually the bigger shows, end up being the highest performing shows, are already sold out 100%. So like I had 1 spot left. Tori Dunlap had a couple spots. Jenna Kutcher. Like if you're a bigger show, you're usually also a top performer.
Now, so you've shared all kinds of stuff, very specific tactics and all of that. But I want to, as we wrap up, go as actionable as possible.
Okay.
And maybe if we could take 2 different sizes of creators. So someone who's getting 50,000 downloads per month, and then a creator who's getting 300,000 downloads per month.
Okay.
Like what are the things that you would go and implement right away?
Okay. So if you're getting 50,000 downloads per month, I would recommend that you start dabbling and getting sponsorships because you are big enough for certain networks. Okay. So there's these networks like AdvertiseCast and Gumball. They cater to non-exclusive podcasts, which means they don't host their podcast.
Okay.
So you don't need to move anything. You can still do your own independent thing. It's a really great option for like people who want to stay independent and sort of like dabble in advertising. So you sign up with Gumball, you sign up with AdvertiseCast, you're non-exclusive with them, and they just start sending you deals. You've got to flight everything yourself. They're not going to help with your ad ops at all. You're likely going to just start with baked in or faked in, depending on if you can get on Megaphone or not. And you can start just monetizing, getting a feel for it. So that's how I first started. I was independent and I just started with AdvertiseCast, Gumball. And then I was like, wait a second, who are they working with? And then I figured out like all the agencies they were working with and I started bypassing them and then started my own network, right? So that's a good place to start. You can also start reaching out direct to brands. So let's say you have a company and you use 50 different tools. So what I used to do is I used to just go, okay, we use Slack, we use Indeed, we use this, we use that. Let's just reach out to them. Sometimes these brands will reroute you to their agency if they work with a podcast agency. Now suddenly you have got podcast agency contacts.
And that was a good introduction. You didn't come in. It's like, oh, the brand made the introduction to the person. And they're like, oh, I'm trying to keep this brand happy because they're a client of mine. So let me take the meeting.
So you can work direct with the brands and come up with your deals yourself. You're going to use CPM models. So there's so much information online about podcast CPMs. They're typically $22 to $30, depending on your niche. And you can put a package together of probably baked in if you're not with a network and you don't want to get too techie. And you can also sell social media. You can sell webinars. You can sell whatever you want directly to these brands, right? And getting experience with AdvertiseCast and Gumball will teach you how podcast ads work and how to do them. And then you'll be able to sell direct better because you'll already know how it all works, right? So that's what I would recommend for 50,000. Now, if you're 300,000 plus and you're in business, self-improvement, and society and culture, come talk to me.
Yes, exactly.
But seriously, you are a great candidate for a network, okay? So for you, I want you to think about how can you max your downloads? You want to think about like episode frequency. So one of the quickest ways to do that, if you are only putting out 4 episodes a month, make it 8.
Right.
Usually it's like a 30% increase in downloads off the bat, okay? If you've been podcasting for a long time, play old episodes. Like I do YAP Classic episodes twice a month of older content. Or I'll play my guest appearances. Like I would love to play your episode on my podcast. I think my listeners would love it, right? And so you can get creative, especially if you speak or whatever, to double your episodes. And now suddenly you have 30% more impressions to sell. Okay.
The guest appearances is an interesting one because if you're doing an interview show, you spend all of this time drawing all the expertise out of someone else.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you look, maybe you talked 20% and the other person talked 80%. That's how an interview goes.
That is, yeah.
But then if you invert it, your own audience hasn't heard as much of your expertise. So it's like, take the guest interview and
they love it, right? So like my audience loves to hear my appearances because I don't do that much solo episodes. Or you can add solo episodes. It's another idea, right? So the frequency of your episodes, the length, like I said, there's multiple variables of how you can make money. The number of commercials that you can put on a show. So if you have an hour-long show, you can put 6 ads. So if your show's only 20 minutes and you want to monetize, can you make it 40 minutes? Because you'll make a lot more money. You'll make double the amount of money if you made it 40 minutes, right? So there's little things you would tweak. You would want to think about, okay, like if I'm really going to be serious about monetizing, maybe I should be guesting on shows once a month to grow my show, joining a network so that you could be in all these growth programs. Like, so for example, we're going to do like PSO revamps for all of our shows. And like,
you're taking what you've learned from your own experiments and they're like, all right, this is what's working. Now we're going to go implement it.
And I have relationships with all these podcast players because I've done so much media buying with them. So now we do like in exchange for $5,000 of social media, you get 10,000 subscribers on CastBox. Like, so we're doing that all the time for our podcasters. So you get into these growth programs for more advanced podcasters. And chances are, if you're that big of a podcast, you've got your own business going on. You want to be with a partner who's going to handle all the tech, make it easy for you, create recording packs and do, you know, to make it as easy as possible for you to monetize.
Yeah.
So those are my 2 recommendations.
I like it. That's very specific. So just going back to the beginning, you know, we came on talking about your show and doing 600,000 in revenue last year, on track for $1 million this year, just off your show. But I think what's so interesting is that the other business opportunities beyond that are worth $6 million combined. And that's like just
hopefully
going to keep
10 million this year.
Yeah. Just keep growing and everything from there. And that's the power of attention. When you can get in front of the right people and you have the right message, like the level of business that you can build is absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
So thanks so much for coming on, for sharing all of this.
I had so much fun. This was such a great interview. Thank you.
Thanks for being one of the first, or actually the very first to record in KIP
Your
Studios, Chicago.
are beautiful, Nathan. Congratulations.
Thank you. Where should people go either to follow your show and maybe connect with you on LinkedIn, but also if they're like, all right, I am that 300,000 subscriber, 300,000 download show, and I'd like some of this managed for me.
So Young and Profiting is my podcast. It is an amazing entrepreneurship show. I highly recommend you guys go check me out on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you like to watch your shows. And then yapmedia.com, yapmedia.com. If you want to check out agency stuff, network, fill out a recruitment form, whatever you want to do, it's all there.
I love it. Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you. I hope this episode lit a fire under you, whether you're a podcast, content creator, marketer, or just somebody out here trying to grow your impact. Remember, we all start from zero. We all start from scratch. I didn't launch Young and Profiting with a fancy team or a big budget. I was working full time, doing this as a side hustle, grinding every day and night because I believed in my vision. And that belief allowed me to recruit other people who helped me build it alongside of me, because you can't do it alone. And now we've grown into a multi-million-dollar show, a soon-to-be 8-figure business, a network of some of the top creators in the world, some of the people that I used to look up to, like John Lee Dumas, Russell Brunson, Neil Patel, Lori Harder, Jenna Kutcher. They're all in my network, and I'm responsible for their podcast monetization. And while I am the podcast princess, and I'm one of the biggest experts in podcast monetization, the thing I want you to know is that I'm still learning. I'm still learning every day, and I'm still trying to learn more and more. And that's the mindset you need if you want to build something meaningful. You need to be an expert. Something that lasts requires consistency, curiosity, courage, competency. And if there's one thing I want you to take away from this episode, it's that your voice matters. So with the right strategy, the right positioning, and the right energy, you can turn your message into a movement, just like Young and Profiting. Thank you so much for tuning in to this YAP Live episode. I hope you guys got a chance to check us out on Spotify video or YouTube. Make sure you subscribe if you're a new listener of the show. I appreciate you guys so much more than you know. Keep showing up, keep dreaming big, and as always, listen, learn, and profit. This is your host, Hala Taha, aka the Podcast Princess, signing off.